This is the second book in my series, Tinderbox. It is, oh, that's, yeah, Tarotmancer.
Oh.
Tarotmancer, I mean, not
Oh,
Tinderbox. Do I have, is there a copy of Tinderbox?
We have sold all.
Here we go.
Gotta
Okay.
give it back now.
Now, oh, I will. We're all ready. Tinderbox. It is based on the Hans Christian Andersen story of the same name. It involves a young witch named Isbeth. She comes home to find her grandmother has been murdered, and she wants to find out who it was that did it. In the meantime, there is a young prince, Bram, whose country has been conquered. He's trying to free his country. She's trying to find out who killed her grandmother, and it turns out it's the same man, the king who took Bram prisoner and who committed the murder. So they have to put aside their differences, and they have to get together to save the realm. And I'm gonna hand this back to you before I forget. This is the second, Tarotmancer. It is about a young woman named Harper who is a diviner. She can summon spirits through her tarot cards. And she meets up with the wily thief, Renard the Fox, after the old fable. And she has to decide whether to help Renard, because his past has gone up with him and now he's in trouble, or go back to her land and save her family from this approaching evil. And I am actually working on the third to the series. It's called The Hatter's Daughter. It is based on Alice in Wonderland, so I'm hoping that'll be out hopefully in the next 4 or 5 months. So I'm going to read from Tarotmancer. And like I said, it's the second book in the series. Innocent, the cards whispered. They were going to execute an innocent person. Harper was barely out of infancy when the cards had first spoken to her. They did not speak as a person would, although they murmured words beyond her understanding. Other times she saw things, visions that sometimes frightened her. She heard them whisper this time and hurried down the crowded street towards the market square. Their voices, which she had learned to distinguish over the years, continued to guide her. The citizens of Inrone filled the streets even at this early hour, most of whom hadn't slept or were about to take to their beds after either work or pleasure. The affluent came much later or sent their servants out for whatever it was they needed. The market square itself stood at the intersection of Merchant Road and Copper Street, which made up the business district. Depending on how far you walked, the prominent shops were closer to the square, but as you traveled farther, that's where you found the less reputable merchants. Harper avoided executions. Why would she want to watch someone die? But when a young girl running errands for her boss nearly knocked Harper into the dirt and explained she was going to a hanging, she heard the Lady of Lies say, "Innocent." As Harper approached Market Square, she threaded her way through to the head of the crowd. At the center was a somewhat new, knee-high circle of white limestone bricks with an uncomplicated design. A fountain once stood there, but there was nothing left but crumbling pieces of blue-veined marble. The city officials weren't willing to import the rock a second time, since rising from the dark, rich earth was an offshoot of the celestial vine. From its roots at Jack and Irons to the island of Moorwind, its branches and offshoots were the source of all magic and held the fragile island together. The central stalk was wide but supple and healthy green, growing 12 feet tall in whatever time it took. Smoother than a baby's arse, as people like to say. Cordons made branch-like extensions slimmer than the trunk, but enough to support the weight of a teenage boy. The ones who dared make the climb proved this. Smaller canes and shoots cascaded down in a shower of dark tendrils. It had appeared right in the middle of the noon rush. The sound of stone breaking was like lightning striking many times, and the earth trembled underneath the terrified crowd. The offshoot broke through, continued to grow as it reached into the sky. Opinions of this happening varied. Some said it was the vine giving its blessing to Inrone. Others had more disturbing guesses. That it served as a warning for all the people partaking in unlawful or immoral activities in the dark alleys of the square. Harper didn't know either way. Customers asked her a few times and she gave them the same answer. She'd never been able to make a divination about the vine. Besides being the source of magic, it also birthed the magical creatures who were more powerful than Harper hoped to be. 3 people stood in the loan. One held the reins of a mare upon which the thief sat, with a rope around his neck. A second man was to his left, and an old woman near the horse's flank. Harper guessed she would slap it on the rear to get it going. They'd slung the rope over a lower cordon. Harper pushed closer, recognizing the man holding the reins as the local junker, although the well-to-do liked to call his wares antiques. "Master Jensen," she called. He turned upon hearing her name. "Hello, Miss Harper. Come to see the spectacle?" Harper did not consider an execution a show, but didn't say. "You're about to execute an innocent man." "What's that?" He crossed his beefy arms across his chest. "He was in my shop nosing around. The next thing, a few small trinkets gone." "You saw him lift them?" "Who is that brat?" the second man, who Harper didn't recognize, demanded. "Let's get on with it." "Be at ease, Felix." "I will not." While the men continued their argument, Harper inspected the would-be thief. He was slight and thin. His skin was an unusual reddish brown that Harper had never seen before. It was difficult to tell which part of the Isles he was from. His hair was long, fiery, and unkempt as it rested across his shoulders. His shirt, vest, and hose, even his shoes, were red. He wasn't very smart dressing like that, despite his position. Harper swore he was smirking. Bright eyes, the color of chestnut, seemed to take the entire crowd into consideration. But for what? Escape? He didn't have a chance without her intervention. "Now hold on," Master Jensen was saying. "Our Miss Harper is a diviner." "She fair divined my wife was pregnant with twins. I got good numbers from her. Let her have her say." Felix rolled his eyes but kept quiet. Harper stepped over the limestone wall and stood next to the horse and brought out her deck. The first one she drew was what she wanted. She showed it to Jensen. "Do you recognize this card?" He peered at it. "Aye, ain't that the lying lady?" Harper smiled. "Yes, although the proper describer was Lady of Lies." "Would you untie his hands, please?" "Now wait up," Felix began. Jensen shrugged and complied, saying, "I'd not try to run, thief. This lady's about to save your arse." "What's your name?" she asked him. He didn't speak right away. "Red." "Just Red?" "Yes." "Take the card." "Why?" "You want to be hanged? Take the damn card." He did so. The lady whispered again, "Innocent." Just to satisfy her own curiosity, Harper nodded and drew another. The Jack. Amongst the major arcana of the lady, like the Lady of Lies, it could mean different things. Some diviners thought the Jack referred to the farm boy, while those not familiar with tarot assumed it was the same as the Jack from a common deck. Within the tarot, it meant greed, unless reversed. Harper let the card fall to the ground. The next she drew was the Martyr, tempered by the Weaver and the Match Girl. He is prideful and greedy, but also has somewhat of a heart. If he were guilty, the lady would have said so. Harper retrieved her cards. "Then tell us, O mighty diviner, who did it?" Felix's tone was mocking. Harper ignored him. "Master Jensen, if I may look at your store, hold the thief here." When Harper walked into the shop, Jensen pointed out where the trinkets had been. Harper drew again. The Piper, somebody being led astray. The Deceiver, and the Lady of Lies. Harper pinched the bridge of her nose. "Who is that man out there?" "That's my cousin." Jensen's eyes widened. "You don't say." One last card, the Knot. "Someone tied to you," Harper said. "You'd better have a talk with that cousin of yours." In no time, Jensen persuaded Felix to hand over the goods, and they released Red. Jensen muttered an apology before dragging his wayward cousin back into the store, and the crowd went about their business. Harper didn't expect Red to stay around and thank her, but he did. He did just that. He approached and said, "Thank you, Lady Diviner." "I ain't no lady," Harper shrugged. "Call me Harper if you like." "You seem educated if you don't slip into that common speak." "I am," Harper said. "Pops always said an ignorant gambler is a poor gambler." "Pops?" "The owner of the establishment where I work." "Ah, an illegal gambling den," Red said matter of fact. Harper said, non-committal. "I'm glad I could help. Nothing's worse than being accused of thievery when you ain't no thief. He laughed as if he knew a secret. That is where you were wrong, Lady Harper, he said. I am a thief. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know where the other gentleman went, but did you have any questions for me?
What motivated you to write this story?
With this particular one, like I said, it's based on the old fairy tale Renard the Fox. Of course, it's about a fox who went around playing tricks on his fellow anthropomorphic, the people where he lived, his neighbors. And at the end of the original story, nothing happens to him. He kind of just gets away and continues to do things. So I thought, what would happen if his past finally caught up with him? Because he did some really rotten things to people who were supposed to be his friends and neighbors. And it's helpful to just let that go. So this is how she meets up with Red. No, not trying to spoil it, but like I said, Red's past catches up to him. And unfortunately, Harper gets caught up in the middle of it. And of course, this really ticks her off because, you don't want to get dragged into somebody else's business like that. Which is why she has to make the decision, okay, am I going to help him? Or I'm just going to say, forget about him and go back to help my family. Tinderbox is similar. It was, if you're familiar with the story, in the end, the soldier, he kills the old lady, then he uses the tinderbox and he becomes king. And I thought, you mean to tell me nothing happened to him after that? All this murdering and treachery, and somebody has to do something about this. So that's how I got that idea. To have, basically both stories are about someone having to face the consequences when no consequences were done when the story first ended.
I was wondering, there are far fewer women in science fiction, fewer women writers, and there are far fewer people of color who are doing well, at least being promoted well enough in science fiction. What do you think the barriers are to women, especially women of color in science fiction?
I think it's because for a long time, science fiction, and no offense to guys, was purview of men. There were women who wrote science fiction, but you never knew it. I don't know if you're familiar with Star Trek.
Yeah.
Sure. DC Fontana. She wrote like about 20 episodes of that show. And she's a woman, but she used DC because everybody thinks, Hyland and all of those other guys, they're the old dudes who wrote science fiction. And it took Octavia Butler. It finally took her coming up to light the fire, and then a lot of African American female authors like myself, that's who we take our cue from. Because I thought too, there's gotta be some science fiction and fantasy that is written by people of color and for people of color.
Exactly.
So that's how I got these two. Any other questions?
You mentioned Octavia Butler just now, who is a favorite of mine, and I've noticed that her first book has now been made into a graphic novel.
Yes.
Do you see that as a possibility for your work?
I'm hoping so, yes. Either that or, I'd like to see my work as a series, an animated series. Because I know a lot of authors will say, I want to make it into a movie. But usually when they make a book into a movie, they take a lot of liberties. And I figure with something like a series, you can take your time, get each episode, and tell the entire story. Which is why a lot of times now you see on Netflix, a lot of those big movies, 2 or 3, 4 hours, they didn't do well. Netflix is now making them into series. For example, they're doing Dune. And and I think it's Netflix that's doing the Avatar one, The Last Airbender. It is? So I figure it's a lot safer. And I've had people tell me, hey, your stuff could be great on Netflix. So if I can only get to somebody at Netflix. Okay, we've got more people in. I don't know if I should
Need a little more.
Anybody, any other questions?
How do you get through your thought process of storytelling?
It's not easy all the time, because unfortunately, life happens. And there are times where I just have to sit down in front of the computer, put on some music or something, and then just go ahead and write. My process is I have to get this done. First off, I have deadlines, so no. And I don't like leaving anything half finished, which is why I'm in a hurry to get this third one finished, so hopefully I'll get that done soon. Oh, there you go. Okay. Should I maybe read something else? Let these people
Yeah,
come
if you
in?
like.
Does anybody want to come and ask questions of the author? Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys sitting here and giving me your attention and everything. And I hope you enjoy my books. I'm going to be here to sign them. I have extras if you run out. And no, enjoy the bookstore. I love it here. I think this is wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much.